Alright, let's talk about one of the most misunderstood parts of training volume. You hear people throwing around words like junk volume, optimal volume, overtraining, but how much should you actually do? Should you go hard every workout or save your energy? And does it change based on whether you're training for muscle, strength, or competition? Today, we're breaking it all down, so by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how much training volume you need for your goals. First off, what even is training volume? The simplest way to measure it is sets per muscle group per week. So, if you hit chest twice a week and do 3 sets of bench press, 3 sets of incline, and 3 sets of dips, that's 9 sets per week for chest. But here's the problem: not all volume is productive volume. Some people do way too little and wonder why they're not growing, while others do way too much and just spin their wheels without recovering. So, how much is actually needed for hypertrophy pure muscle growth? Studies suggest the minimum effective volume is around 10 sets per muscle per week, and the upper limit is around 20 to 25 sets per week before you see diminishing returns. If you're a beginner, you can get amazing gains on 10 to 12 sets per week since your body is still adapting. If you're advanced and trying to push muscle growth further, 15 to 20 sets per week is usually the sweet spot. Now, does this mean you should just hit 20 sets a week and call it a day? Not necessarily. How much volume you can handle depends on how intense those sets are. If you're training close to failure on every set, you'll need fewer sets to grow. If you're leaving 3 to 4 reps in the tank, you might need more total volume to make up for the lower intensity. But what about strength training? Volume works a little differently here. If your goal is max strength, like getting a bigger squat or bench, you don't need as much volume, you need quality, heavy sets. Strength-focused programs usually stick to 8 to 15 total sets per muscle per week. But the difference is that these sets are heavier and focus on lower reps, 3 to 6 reps per set instead of 8 to 12. So, if you're a power lifter or us training for max strength, doing 30 sets of squats per week ain't going to help. Instead, focusing on fewer, high-quality sets with heavier weight and more rest is what builds strength over time. Alright, so we've got muscle growth versus strength, but what about if you're leading up to a competition, max out, or testing day? This is where deloads and tapering come in. The closer you get to a max attempt or competition, the more volume you need to cut back on. You don't want to go into a meet or PR attempt fatigued. So about 2 to 3 weeks out, you start reducing volume, but keeping intensity high. This means fewer total sets, but still lifting heavy to stay sharp. Now let's get into some specific scenarios where people mess up training volume. Let's say you're in a bulk phase trying to pack on size. This is the time when higher volume makes sense. You're eating more, recovering better, and can push towards that 15 to 20 plus sets per muscle per week range. Your goal is to stimulate as much growth as possible, so you can afford to train with higher volume and moderate intensity. They tried to keep up the same volume they did while bulking, but now they're in a calorie deficit, recovering slower, and just burning themselves out. Instead of doing 20 sets per muscle per week, you should drop to 10 to 15 sets per muscle per week. Focus on maintaining strength, and let your diet handle the fat loss. High volume with poor recovery. Let's say you're a busy student or working long hours, and you're only sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night. If your recovery sucks, piling on volume ain't going to help. You're just digging yourself into a hole where your performance tanks, and you're not actually getting stronger or bigger. In this case, focusing on intensity over volume is key. What if you're training a lagging muscle group? Let's say your arms are small, but your chest and back grow easily. Instead of just piling on extra volume everywhere, increase volume specifically for that muscle group. Maybe go from 10 to 15 sets per week for biceps and triceps, while keeping other muscle groups at maintenance. Now, let's talk about junk volume, aka doing a ton of sets that don't actually help. If you're just going through the motions, not training with intent, or doing 20 sets of half-effort curls, that's not productive volume. Instead of adding more sets, Focus on pushing the sets you already have closer to failure. So, what's the takeaway? Training volume is not one size fits all. It depends on your goal, recovery, and intensity. If you want hypertrophy, aim for 10 to 20 sets per muscle per week, depending on how much intensity you're using. If you want strength, go for 8 to 15 sets per muscle per week, but with heavier weights and lower reps. If you're peaking for a competition or PR, drop volume to 3 weeks out, but keep intensity high. If you're bulking, you can afford higher volume, but if you're cutting, drop to the lower end of the range. And if your recovery is trash, less volume, more focus on intensity. At the end of the day, it's not about doing the most, it's about doing what actually works for you. If you found this helpful, hit that like button, drop a comment with how much volume you use, and subscribe for more breakdowns like this.